From K2 News, this is Your Voice, Your Vote, the race for Oregon governor.
It's an historic race for Oregon. 3 women are the top contenders for the state's top job. Tonight, an important debate on a big stage.
I think it's working.
Will see tonight's debate from the
K2
coast to the
News,
Idaho border.
this is Your
and
Voice,
Portland,
Your
all
Vote,
the way down to
the race for
California
Oregon
border,
governor.
thanks to
Oh,
our
shoot.
sister stations in
Now it's
Eugene
playing
and
somewhere
Medford.
else too.
And we'll hear directly it's from an historic race from for Oregon. Parts of the 3 state. Women are the top contenders.
Oh dear.
State Senate as a Democrat, but is now running as an unaffiliated candidate. Will it be Democrat Tina Kotek, who served 15 years in the Oregon House of Representatives,
We should be good.
including 9 years as House Speaker? Will it be Republican Christine Drazen, who also served in the Oregon House of Representatives for 3 years, including 2 years as Minority Leader? There are big challenges in this state: inflation, gun violence, homelessness, declines in education, abortion rights. Your Voice, Your Vote, the race for Oregon governor debate starts right now. And good evening. Thank you for joining us for tonight's K2 Your Voice, Your Vote debate. I'm Steve Dunn. To welcome our viewers watching us right now on KUNP Univision. This is being translated live into Spanish closed captions, so our Spanish-speaking viewers can watch tonight's debate in their preferred language. As we mentioned, tonight's debate is being broadcast across the state, thanks to our sister stations in Eugene and Medford. In a matter of weeks, voters will pick the next governor of Oregon. But tonight, we'll hear from the candidates themselves. And joining us tonight are Christine Drazen, Republican candidate who lives in Canby. She's a former House Republican leader, and if elected, she'd be the first Republican to hold the office in almost 4 decades. Betsy Johnson, a non-affiliated candidate from Scappoose. She was a longtime state senator and the former chair of the Joint Ways and Means Committee. And Tina Kotek, the Democratic candidate who lives in Portland, was the longest-serving Speaker of the Oregon House. She held that position for almost a decade. I want to bring in my colleague now, Deb Knapp, at the live desk. She'll be introducing some of your questions to the candidates tonight, but first she's joining us to explain the rules for this debate. Deb?
Well, Steve, the candidates have agreed to these rules, and we have a team that will be working to fact-check and time each response. Here's how things will work. Tonight, each candidate will be given 1 minute to respond to each question. The first and second candidates to answer a question will then have a 30-second time for rebuttal if they choose. Throughout the debate, each candidate will only be able to give a rebuttal 3 times. If we ask for clarification from a candidate, the timer will be reset. Again, later in the debate, I'll also be bringing some of your questions to the candidates via video. For now, Steve, back to you.
Can't wait to hear those questions. Deb Knapp, we'll see you very soon. Thank you for that. Earlier today, we drew some names, and the order for the debate will be Christine Drazen, Betsy Johnson, followed by Tina Kotek. So the first question goes to Christine. So here we go now. Oregonians in all parts of the state are struggling to keep up with inflation. Give us the most effective part of your plan to help Oregonians with a rising cost of living. How will that part of your plan work? And please be specific, Christine.
Yeah, thank you so much for having me tonight. It's a pleasure to be on the stage. You know, affordability is a #1 issue for Oregonians across the state. We have, under 10 years of single-party control, seen rising prices here in our state, and that's because of increased taxes. My plan calls for lower taxes. Now, the specifics around lower taxes are, let me be clear, I will veto any taxes that come through the legislative body and arrive on my desk. I will also fight for lower taxes on behalf of Oregon families at every opportunity. That includes rolling back and reducing regulations and the regulatory burden on businesses that are in fact a tax increase. We know that our Clean Fuels program also drives up taxes at the gas station, and I will call for a suspension of our Clean Fuels program as well.
Betsy Johnson, you are next. You have a minute.
Thank you very much. Stop making it worse. For the last decade, under Tina Kotek's leadership, the legislature has larded on more and more regulations, cost drivers, things that make a basket of groceries cost $100, things that are more expensive in hidden ways, additional costs for construction, additional fees, hunting and fishing licenses have gone up. And so my plan is pretty simple. Don't make it worse. I too would veto any bill that would bring a tax increase or any of these
like her.
fees. We've got to cut the regulations that have burdened developers and home builders. We have got to make Oregon's permitting matrix more understandable. Many companies right now are looking at Oregon as impossible to do business here. And once that word gets out into a global marketplace, it's going to be very, very difficult for us to retain, much less recruit new businesses. So my simple answer is stop making it worse.
Tina Kotek, you were next.
I agree.
Well, thank you for this debate tonight. And this is a really important question. We know costs are going up. I was grocery shopping the other day, and a woman came up to me to talk about the rent increases that she's experiencing. And she's working a couple jobs and still having a hard time making ends meet. And I started my work here in public service in Oregon at Oregon Food Bank, listening to families and trying to understand how we could make it easier for them to buy their own food. My opponents tonight forget their records on the issue of helping working families. Christine Drazan voted against a middle-class tax cut when she had the choice to actually support that. Betsy Johnson voted against increasing the minimum wage and providing paid sick leave for workers in Oregon. I'm going to make sure that we make healthcare more affordable, childcare more affordable, help people be able to afford their rent. And I'm the only one on this stage tonight who has stood up for working families year after year.
Anybody for a rebuttal here? Yes, Christine, go ahead. You have 30 seconds.
Yeah, thank you. I think it's really important.
She's
to
been
set
there,
the
what,
record
15
straight on
years?
this issue. You know, as Speaker of the House, Tina Kotek at every opportunity increased the regulatory burden on housing, increased the cost to Oregon families. Frankly, she was driving through a tax increase. It would have increased gas prices by up to $3 a gallon. And she did it
True story.
as Speaker of the House without ever worrying about the dramatic harm that happens in everyday Oregon families. I'm proud of my record of standing with Oregon families.
We're going to go to question number 2 now. We're going to stay on the economy for this. We'll begin with you, Betsy, for this question. We hear talk of a recession. Opinions differ on when it could hit, but the time to start preparing is now. How will you as governor lead the state in preparation for a possible recession?
They still don't think we're in a recession?
I would continue as governor to do the same thing I did as the co-chair of Ways and Means on the Senate side, and that was put more money into a rainy day fund. Stop spending, control our spending. Have a more responsible budget that actually spoke to the priorities of Oregonians, and stop larding up special interests with special projects. So in order to try to prepare, I think we truly have to do that. We need to scrub our budget to make sure that the programs that we are funding are producing results, that they are efficacious, and frankly, that they're auditable. We spent an enormous amount of money on programs that I think if they were subjected to a very rigorous, true audit, not a partisan political audit, would fail. And so we've got to make sure that taxpayers are getting good bang for their buck as we continue to push both Oregon tax money and federal money through the Oregon budget process.
Audit the state.
Kotek, your chance.
Well, I think the most important thing to do right now as our next governor is to take care of the businesses who are hurting at the moment, and those are our small businesses. I've been talking a lot with small businesses over the course of this campaign, and what they're needing right now is more support. You know, I was just visiting with Lisa Schroeder, who runs Mother's Bistro in downtown Portland, and we're talking about what she needs as a small business owner. She needs to see the boarded up windows go away. She needs the trash cleaned up. She needs to make sure that she has a workforce. And what I want to be focusing on to prepare for
But these are your policies, Tina.
Is helping our small businesses.
Sorry.
Making sure our community colleges can be there to provide more classes for people to change jobs, to be there and be available. Making sure childcare is affordable. I want to go back to a very key issue for why people aren't going back to work, because parents don't have the childcare they need. So preparing our small businesses, strengthening them, and if there is a recession, they'll be in a better spot to weather that.
Yeah.
Christine Drazan, your chance.
Yeah, Oregon's state budget under single-party control in the last decade has doubled in size. That means that if a recession comes, we are in a very difficult position to be able to sustain those programs. The programs that we have in Oregon absolutely have got to be restrained. We need to look at our state budget, and we need to be able to limit the size, scope, and impact of the state budget. Frankly, the more government there is, the less opportunity there is for Oregonians to be able to achieve their best and brightest future, because all of us pay for every bit of that government. And so we have got to save, we have got to limit the size and scope of government, and we've got to support jobs. That means that we need to create a business-friendly environment in our state and ensure that whatever we can do, that we are actively and aggressively recruiting new businesses here and supporting the ones that are here.
Any rebuttals before I move on? Yes, Betsy?
That business-friendly environment is an absolute necessity in trying to cite new businesses here, both in my own former legislative district and around the state. I have discovered that word has gone out that Oregon is almost impossible to do business. We permit sequentially. Time and expeditious processing of permits is just not an issue with government offices. I would make sure as governor that our executive branch ran efficiently, and that if people were going to get a permit, they got it fast. If they were going to be denied, they'd get denied fast.
This is where I think she's just there to take votes away from Christine.
We're hear from folks all across the state tonight. So, Deb, what do you have for us?
Well, Steve, our first viewer question comes out of Grants Pass. It's from David Mulchin. He is concerned about the increase in violent crimes that we've seen over the past few years.
My name is David Maltz of Grants Pass, Oregon. I'm kind of curious, with the problems we're having with crime being out of hand right now, what do you plan to do that the previous governor wasn't doing?
You heard it there. Crime affects everybody in the state now. In particular, you heard that from Southern Oregon, as a matter of fact. And Tina, we begin with you. Your thoughts on that?
Yeah, well, crime is up. We're all feeling unsafe. We all want to feel safer. Across the state. And I think what's important in the #1 job of a governor is to keep people safe.
I feel
and
fine
for me,
out
that
here.
That means working with local law
You guys in
enforcement
the cities
to make
that
sure
are out
they
of
have
control.
what they need to address crime. As governor, going specifically after the drug cartels, making sure that whether it's Southern Oregon or up in the urban areas in the metro area, that we can get dangerous drugs off the street, give local law enforcement the ability to get those drugs off the streets. Go after illegal firearms that are causing a lot of violent crimes and deaths in communities across our state. And I think it's really important to make sure we fund the Oregon State Police across the state, so our rural communities in particular have that immediate police response. And that is something I did as Speaker, will continue to do as governor. It's very important to make sure that our communities feel safe and in fact are safe.
Christine Drazen, you have a minute.
I missed that one.
You know, we
But
have
I'm sure she's
never
full of
had
shit.
streets that are as unsafe as they are right now. Portland's homicide rate is up over 200% over a 2-year period. We have experienced 4 homicides over the course of the last weekend. It is a tragedy. It is entirely preventable. We need more law enforcement. We need to hire more police. We need more troopers. We need more police on our streets. That is a dramatic difference between Governor Kate Brown's approach and, frankly, Speaker of the House Tina Kotek's approach when it came to public
Nobody
safety.
wants to be a cop.
More often than not,
They don't
we're
force
talking,
any of the
we're
laws.
talking about women who made the decision to allow riots to continue, who made the decision to make all of us less safe. We have got to repeal Measure 110, and we've got to support law enforcement. If we're going to have safer streets, we need to ensure that law enforcement are present and ready when we need them.
Betsy, it's your turn.
Thank you very much. I have always been pro-cop and will continue to be pro-cop. I am honored to have the endorsement of over 90 working law enforcement professionals that include the last 4 superintendents of the Oregon State Patrol, working narcotics officers, 2/3 of the DAs in the state of Oregon, boots on the ground. And rather than flying a governor out from Maryland to tell us we have a crime problem, I've had these working law enforcement people trust me and I trust them. We've got to untie their hands. My 2 opponents both helped hobble the police in their ability to respond. Christine was absent, MIA, the day that she could have stood up for cops and victims when we changed the juvenile ballot measure 11. Tina actively supported that. We have got to repeal ballot measure 110. That is absolutely a driver in our drug problem. And I would refer it back to the legislature to ask the voters to reconsider. We also got to get our grip on crime in our southern part of the state.
If there are no rebuttals,
That's why
I'll
she's
move
got
on now.
support.
Yes, Tina
I have a
Kotek, you go
rebuttal.
ahead.
I think it's really important to look at the facts of track records here. It's important to have police, but it's helpful if people don't get shot in the first place. And that means common sense gun laws. And both of my opponents have voted against keeping guns away from domestic abusers. They have fought safe storage laws. Senator Johnson voted against background checks. If we're going to keep our communities safe, we must make sure we keep guns out of the hands of folks who are going to hurt people. And I'm the only one who's going to stand up to the gun lobby on this stage.
Christine Drazen has another rebuttal. Go ahead, Christine.
What is the gun lobby?
Thank you. You know, this is an issue that we're all talking about now because Oregonians are less safe. That's the reason this has drawn so much conversation right now. I am also endorsed by law enforcement across our state, and I have always stood with law enforcement. Every opportunity when law enforcement needed me there, I was there.
Staying on the topic of crime now, we want to get your position on ballot measure 114, which would change how we get and use firearms. The measure would limit magazine capacity at 10 rounds, require a permit to buy any gun, require safety training, and implement tougher background checks. How are you going to vote on that measure and explain why? And Christine, we begin with you.
Yeah, thank you. I will be voting no on ballot measure 114.
Perfect.
This happens to be a measure that infringes upon Second Amendment rights. Now, I start there because I think it's very important to recognize that that's a different threshold and a different standard than support for other measures. Tragedies that have occurred across our state are just that. They're tragedies and they're criminal behaviors from people that in fact are experiencing mental health breaks. And that means that we need more support for mental health response. We certainly need to have more law enforcement present, and we have got to do everything we can to ensure that our laws are evenly enforced.
Betsy, measure 114.
Ballot measure 114 is brought to Oregon by people that want to limit the constitutional Second Amendment right of law-abiding citizens. I will be
Listen how smart she is.
For a variety of reasons. One, it has multiple topics and it's going to be aggressively litigated. Two, it brings a Portland solution to the rest of Oregon that will further polarize Oregonians on this emotional and contentious issue. Third, it will unduly burden local police departments. There is no funding mechanism on ballot measure 114. It's left up to the local police departments to provide the range, to do all the bureaucratic work to implement 114. And so I think that it is going to be a very problematic ballot measure, and I will be voting no.
She's going to split the Republicans and the Libertarians.
I will be voting yes on measure 114. And I'm not surprised by my opponents' perspectives because they both have A+ ratings with the NRA. Let's remember that Measure 114 came to us through a grassroots volunteer effort by the faith community who said enough is enough in terms of Oregonians dying from gun violence. And this measure, I believe, will keep our communities safer. And I believe we have to do more. I think it would be critical for us to move the age from 18 to 21 when a person in Oregon could buy a weapon of war. These are common sense things. I've had conversations with responsible gun owners who understand that they follow the rules, they're doing the right things on how they store their weapons, take care of them, use them, and then other people are hurting others. And we have to keep our community safe, and I'm the only one who's going to stand up to the gun lobby here, compared to Senator Johnson and Representative Drazen.
What is the gun lobby?
We move on to the issue of abortion now. Here's the question. Oregon has the least number of restrictions on abortions. In fact, abortion is legal in all stages of pregnancy in this state. Is Oregon out of step with the national mainstream when it comes to access to abortion? And Betsy, we begin with you.
Well, I would submit it's not Oregon that's out of step with the national mainstream. I would assert that it's Christine Drazen who's out of step with Oregon. I am pro-choice. I have been pro-choice right straight along. I've served on a Planned Parenthood board before Tina came to Oregon. For me, a woman's right to reproductive health care is an absolute bedrock value. As governor, I would do everything possible to make absolutely sure that Oregon stayed pro-choice, which is consistent with where most Oregonians are.
Tina, you have 60 seconds.
Well, make no mistake, the national Republican agenda is trying to ban abortion across the country, even in places like Oregon. Christine Drazen wants to ban abortion.
Abortion is actually a non-issue.
She is backed by an extremist organization that wants to ban abortion. And she even co-sponsored a bill that would have thrown doctors in jail if they performed abortions.
It affects 0.6% of the population.
Right now. They are worried after the decision by the Supreme Court.
Because you guys hype it up and it's something it's not.
For Oregonians to control their bodies and have access to health care. That's what this is about.
I'm pro-responsible banging.
Of Oregon has plenty of reasons why they haven't endorsed Betsy Johnson. I'm the only candidate on this stage who's been endorsed by Planned Parenthood PAC of Oregon and Pro-Choice Oregon, because I am a champion and want to make sure that everyone has access to health care.
Christine Drazen.
Thank you. I am a pro-choice woman. I have never shied away from my pro-life values. I'm sorry about that. I was hearing all this choice talk. It got in my head. But the reality of where we're at right now is basically this is
I'm
the
a pro-choice
only issue
woman.
that my opponents in this race want to be on the ballot this election. They would like to make you believe that choice is on the ballot. It's not. Do not be manipulated by people that just want to hold on to power. We have existing Oregon laws, as Steve has mentioned, where abortion is actually available at all stages of the pregnancy. Elective abortion is available at all stages of the pregnancy. And that will not change with me as governor. I have been very clear that I will, in fact, enforce existing laws and will not change existing laws. The fact that this is all my opponents want to talk about means that this is all they have to run on, and it's a little bit pathetic.
So yes or no?
Betsy Johnson?
I think it's important that the viewers know that Ms. Drazen has already promised to veto any pro-choice legislation without even seeing the bills.
What does that mean?
I have to ask, does this extend a litmus test to judges that she as governor would appoint? Would it extend to taking federal money for health care if it came with any kind of pro-choice strings attached to it? I think that it is very, very important to emphasize that while she refers to women's reproductive health care as pathetic, Ms. Kotek and my advocacy for it, I object to that characterization. I'm pro-choice.
And Tina Kotek, you had your hand up.
I do, because I think it's important to be honest.
I don't even understand.
Honest with Oregonians. Representative Drazen has cleared her website of her stances on abortion that she had in the primary. That should tell you a lot. And as governor, even if the laws don't change, a governor has a lot of authority to change budgets, how they direct agencies. And actually, when someone says, trust me, that's
I don't give any shit about this. This is just it's one of those fake, one of those fake fucking issues they bring up.
Michelle mentioned all the candidates have one rebuttal left.
Just to do a, hey, we got you.
We go forward here.
Like nobody really cares.
Deb Neff now with another
pretend
question
like they
from
do.
across the state. Deb?
Well, Steve, this is from Brooke out of Medford, and her concern is over homelessness and the underutilization of current resources.
My name is Brooke Midkiff. I'm from Medford, Oregon. And issues for me I'd like to see fixed. One thing is the homeless problem, and I think we could do a lot better for our homeless people with the resources that we have available. It seems that we don't really use them.
Is there a better way to use the state resources? That's the question here. Let's start with Tina Kotek. Tina?
Thank you. And thank you, Brooke, for the question. Because we don't want to see our neighbors on the streets. And if you live in the home right next to someone who's living in
Speaker of the House, 15 years, I think.
None of us are doing well.
Something like
when
that.
Our neighbors are sleeping
I should
outside.
Google it.
And it's almost 3 years ago now that I called for a state of emergency when it came to our homelessness crisis. And to fund more shelters, to do the things we need to keep people safe. And there is more money out there, and it's not being managed well. And I think we should remember that instead of getting started almost 3 years ago on this issue,
you've been there.
Losing time on this, Representative Drazen led her Republicans out the door when we should have been working on this issue in the legislative session. So what I would say is what we need is a plan that I have on my website. I'm the only one here who has a plan talking about helping people going tent by tent, working with individuals sleeping outside, get them into shelters like converted motels, which my opponents opposed, and making sure we can get into long-term permanent housing, because that is the ultimate answer.
Christine?
9 years.
Yeah, homelessness is an issue across all corners of our state, and thank you for the question. This is certainly an issue in Medford as well. I will declare a homelessness state of emergency on day one of my administration to ensure that we marshal all resources at a state level and provide additional supports to local governments as they respond to the crisis on their streets.
No, ain't nobody gonna fix it.
We can respond to this issue with both compassion and accountability. We have had the opportunity in the last few years to have the focus be housing first. as if that, in fact, is the only issue at play when it comes to our homelessness crisis. But instead, what we know is that this, in fact, is a humanitarian crisis.
It's just worse with
and
Tina.
The challenge on our street reflects the fact
because
that
she's a
people
Democrat and they've been in
they're struggling
charge
with
forever.
mental health challenges. They're struggling with drug addiction. We must recognize that we have to resolve this issue and solve this problem with a holistic approach to individuals on a case-by-case basis, and not simply approach it like all they need is a key to a tiny house and the problem is solved.
Betsy Johnson, your turn.
Tina Kotek has styled herself as the architect of Oregon's housing policy. I would pose the question, then why is it getting worse? We're better at pitching tents than we are at pulling permits.
See how good she is?
Tina has a plan, so we're going to meet and plan. Christine wants to declare an emergency. They've declared 6 emergencies in Portland. All you need to do is look out the window to know that there's an emergency. I'm the only one on this stage that's actually doing something. 20 years ago, I was introduced to an organization called Helping Hands and its charismatic founder, Alan Evans. We helped repurpose an underused, abandoned government building and turn it into a place of healing, hope, and recovery. It is the Bybee Lakes Hope Center, and it's in the former Wapato Jail, which is no longer a jail. It is a comfortable, warm, safe place for people on the streets to go and sleep and recover. So I would submit planning and declaring emergencies is one thing. Actually doing something with urgency and purpose and success is an entirely different outcome.
We're going to stay on the issue of homelessness right now, and here's the question. If you believe the local government's elected leadership is failing in its response to the homeless crisis, what action will you take to reduce the homelessness we see on a daily basis? And Christine, we begin with you.
Yeah, local governments have been handed a very, very difficult challenge in front of them. You know, the Ninth Circuit Court is not doing them any favors by repeatedly handing down rulings which continue to limit their ability to be responsive to what's going on in the streets. As governor, I will advocate on behalf of Oregonians and certainly our homeless individuals as well when this issue comes before the Supreme Court. We have got to respond to this in a way that allows us to have a compassionate response, not simply turn a blind eye to people that are on the street. We have got to do more to get people off the street, increase access to housing, and ensure that on a case-by-case basis we are meeting their needs in real time and have a better understanding of what those needs are across our state.
Betsy Johnson.
Well, I would start by recognizing that we don't have a good profile of the people that are on the streets. I think we need to do a census, find out why they're there. Is it homeless? I mean, is it poverty? Is it domestic violence? Is it drug addiction? Is it mental illness? Or is it just a criminal decision to live on the streets and victimize others?
We need to find out where they're coming from.
The law. We can remove tents from the streets, but we have to have alternate sites, and I would submit that there are plenty of other alternate sites. I would call on Metro to free up the Expo Center, both the parking lot and the physical convention area. Use those as places where people could put tents. There could be adequate enforcement. There could be wraparound services. I would empower the police, not tie their hands in dealing with folks. I drove by what may have been a dead body this morning in downtown Portland on my way to the office. It is shocking to me how badly Portland is dealing with this situation. I would use the convening power of the governor's office to call together the professionals, set a plan, set budgets, set dates for deliverables, hold people accountable, and if those people don't do it, get new people.
All right, Tina Kotek.
Man.
This is such an important issue.
She's only polling at 13%, but goddamn, she's good.
Just snippets of no plans from my opponents about how we're going to deal with this. And I think it's very important to talk about the people who are living on the street need services now. And it's also critical not to have any more people become homeless. And I want to say we have to look at each other's records. When I fought to keep people housed and kept them from eviction, these 2 women opposed me. When I said, let's keep people from losing their homes from foreclosure in the pandemic, they opposed that. When we talked about getting more funding for shelters across the state and converting motels to shelters, they opposed that. There are ways to solve this problem. And as governor, getting in with local government on day one saying, how are you using money? Let's get on the streets, talk to people, get them into housing, get them into services. We can do this.
So I think Tina Kotek should drop out
Christine wants
and
to use her
endorse Betsy.
Here. Go ahead, Christine.
Yeah, there is no greater indictment of Tina Kotek's failed leadership than the homeless situation we see on our streets. She is personally responsible for legislation which has created the tent cities that we see every day across our state. There is no doubt that she has, in fact, created an environment that has enabled and encouraged the existence of homelessness across our state and used it as an excuse to increase government programs and government costs to no benefit to the people that are struggling.
Ding, ding, ding.
We move on to the topic of education now. Here we go. We're coming off 2 years of major disruption in schools due to the COVID pandemic, leading to significant learning loss. As head of Oregon schools, how will you turn this around? Betsy Johnson, we begin with you.
Never close the schools again. We closed down the schools unnecessarily for 2 years. We have no measure of the social, mental health, or emotional damage that we did, but we have certainly gotten a snapshot of the academic damage. The test scores that came back were absolutely awful. But that just confirms a downward trajectory of our schools, led by Tina Kotek and the union bosses at the Oregon Education Association. When our kids couldn't meet the standards, what was the response? Lower the standards. The teachers managed to come to the front, not classroom teachers. I'm saying these are the unions that are describing policy. Classroom teachers and teachers came to the front of the line rather than getting a promise to open the schools. They were put ahead of frail elderly. The whole education dilemma was laid bare by the existence of COVID. And I think that as governor, I would never do that again. We must bring remedial education back in to bring our students up to grade. It is an imperative. Our kids have been cheated terribly.
Tina, your turn.
God damn.
Well, we all know things have been hard for our children. I talk about it with my niece who just entered the 2nd grade. And you know, the parents, the educators, the bus drivers, everyone's been impacted by this, and it's been difficult. And I want to thank them for the work they've been doing. I sat down with some teenagers who are in school right now and asked them, what do you need from your next governor? And they said, we need smaller class sizes.
Kotek's full of it.
We need more mental health supports to help us what we've just been through.
Kotek's.
More career and technical education. And they want to make sure that they can be safe in their classrooms and safe from gun violence. And I am 100% with them. I made sure we added $1 billion more to our schools as the next governor, making sure we meet those goals, increase our graduation rates, fully fund career and technical education, provide mental health supports. And I have to say that both Senator Johnson and Representative Drazen want to cut funding to our schools. And that is the wrong direction right now. We need to help our students. We need to invest in public education.
Christine, it's your turn.
You know, I am a mom of 3. And I can tell you from personal experience that the COVID period was absolutely an abysmal failure. It hurt our kids. It hurt my kids. It hurt kids across our entire state. Kate Brown
I don't know, I kind of liked it.
Harmed our students. No matter what's said on the stage today, the most important thing to know is that I will stand with families. I will raise graduation requirements. I will improve graduation rates. I have always supported full funding of schools. I had a piece of legislation to fully fund schools, which Tina Kotek did not allow to advance. I had legislation to reopen our schools, which Tina Kotek shot down. We have got to stand with families. We have got to stand with parents. We've got to get politics out of the classroom and parents back in. There is a way to move forward together, but we have got to reprioritize our kids again and recognize that they were the ones that took the brunt of the COVID response from Kate Brown and Tina Kotek.
We are going to stay on the topic of education here, and here we go. Lack of staffing continues to be an issue in schools all across the state right now. As governor, how will you remedy that? Tina, we start with you.
Well, it's essential that we have educators and adults in the classrooms and the other staff, the front desk staff,
It's not nice, I'm
the
sorry.
janitors, everyone who's in the school.
The way she
helping
gets
our
in
students.
character before she
We have to
answers a
respect
question every time is just
those
hilarious.
individuals and what they've been through, and help them stay on the job, more professional development,
Well.
making sure their mental wellness is in a good place so they can be there day in and day out. I think we have to recognize that we are competing with the private sector right now. We have to make sure some of our lowest paid educators, like our educational assistants, are getting paid more so they stay in that classroom instead of taking a job with Amazon. What's important is to focus on our children who need to have those caring adults in the classroom with them so they can get the best education possible. And it's important that we focus on getting our children to reading by 3rd grade. If not, those students are 4 times more likely not to graduate. So we have to have focus, and we have to support our education workforce because they're doing the job.
Kids read way before 3rd grade. What the hell? What?
Christine, we're talking lack of staffing. Go ahead.
Yeah, you know, a strong teacher makes all the difference in the lives of a student. And my kids were fortunate enough to have some really incredible teachers over the course of their academic careers, which we're grateful for. But I know from talking to those same teachers that they're burned out right now. COVID was very hard on teachers. It was very hard on families. And I know that they're facing workforce challenges across this profession. I will support additional opportunities for teachers to be paid enough to be able to continue to remain in the profession and to draw people into the profession. We have got to support our schools, we've got to support our kids. And along the way, we need to get creative about how we get people into our schools. You know, there are programs across this nation that take a look at our instructional aides and move them along the progression to the point where they can then step into the role as teacher by continuing to remain in the schools. I think we need to look at this creatively and be innovative about this workforce challenge.
Betsy Johnson, you have a minute.
It isn't just staffing in the schools, it's staffing everywhere. Restaurants can't keep the front of the house or the back of the house full. It has to do with housing. It's inexorably tied to housing. You cannot attract a skilled workforce to places where there is no housing or no affordable housing. We have got to recognize, as Ms. Drazen pointed out, the toll that COVID took on classroom teachers. One of the places that I would go to be informed about how to deal with a teacher shortage or a staffing shortage, because it is the entire school, is the frontline people that are actually doing the work. I would not rely on the unions to tell me. I would go to classroom teachers, parents, and local school boards and ask for their recommendations and thoughts on where are enhancements necessary in their school district. I think it is incredibly important to put parents and classroom teachers back in the forefront of helping us decide how investments are the most efficaciously and beneficially spent on behalf of our kids.
I'm with Betsy. I'm
Tina Kotek.
I'm not a fan of the,
I have
the
to say,
unions.
I think it's incredibly important to understand that my opponents say we should cut money from our schools. They said we should undo the Student Success Act, which is adding $1 billion more into our schools right now, when we need it most.
And
So
not
they can
producing
say
any
what they
results.
want, and
What you're doing isn't producing results, though, Tina. Sorry, I'm not in this.
Those resources are necessary right now, and
I'll
they
calm down.
would cut those resources if they were made governor. I can't support that. And people need to know that.
We are talking drugs in our state now. That is the next topic here. And here we go. Measure 110.
Yeah, let's talk about drugs.
Criminalized possession of small amounts of drugs in Oregon has become an issue, certainly in this election. It was approved by voters in 2020. The measure was supposed to focus more on treatment and less on penalties. Is this measure working the way it was promised to voters? Would you change any part of this measure? If so,
I still think Betsy's just a spoiler candidate, but God, she's good.
Measure 110 has been a failure. And we know that when we look at the increased rate of overdoses in our state. We know that when we see how long it took and is still taking to get money out the door in support of services. We have got to repeal Measure 110. As I have been on the campaign trail, I've heard from Oregonians across our entire state who have real concerns about the impacts of Measure 110 in their families and in their communities. And they absolutely are calling for leadership in this issue, and I will provide that leadership. I will call on the state legislature to refer a measure back out to voters, which removes the portion of the measure which decriminalized possession of hard drugs, and instead commit to continue to fund supportive services and give people the opportunity to get into treatment so that they can enter into a lifetime of recovery.
Betsy, Measure 110.
You characterized it as a small amount of hard drugs. I would characterize it as small but lethal. The fellow that I saw on the street today, I don't know whether he OD'd, what happened to him, but walk anywhere in downtown and it's open air drug markets that come frequently with violence and intimidation. It's terrible. I would absolutely re-refer ballot measure 110 to the legislature to ask them to re-refer it to the voters. I think it was sold to voters in a very disingenuous way, and I think we need an honest conversation about the nexus between lethal drugs, homelessness, mental health deterioration, crime, and violence. It's all inexorably tied. And when you add that to the cartels now running much of the southern part of the state in the black market marijuana, Oregon's laissez-faire attitude about drugs has accelerated much of our urban decay and has led to death and violence. We absolutely need to re-examine ballot measure 110 before we waste a whole lot of money. I think it needs to be scrapped, started over with an honest conversation.
Tina Kotek.
She's right. Like,
Oregonians
but I really
have
enjoy
lost
having all the mushrooms I want.
friends and family members to addiction and overdose and death. It's an epidemic in our state. When voters approved Measure 110, they said to state government, find a better way. Get folks into treatment. That's the best course of action.
I don't know where the open-air drug markets are. I'm not from the city.
Has it gone well? No. I think Governor Brown has been absent in making sure those dollars got out in an efficient
I'm assuming she means the tent cities up there in Portland and stuff.
The providers, and the goal is to provide more recovery and treatment for individuals who are ready.
That's one thing you got to keep in mind. Most of what these people are talking about,
we need to make that happen. We don't throw in the
doesn't include a majority of Oregon. They're talking about very concentrated areas.
But I will say for Portland in particular, in addition to making Measure 110 work, we need a meth stabilization center in Portland. We need a place for cops to take folks, not the emergency departments, when they are in a meth-related psychosis.
Okay, we're going to talk about wildfires now. So important throughout much of this.
Oh, I know something about wildfires. Let's talk about wildfires.
What can you do as governor to help Oregonians avoid losing their lives and their homes to catastrophic wildfires? Betsy, we start with you.
Well, start by putting them out. We need to harmonize our response to conflagration with the federal government. If I'm not the first, I'm in the first couple of women that were certified to carry water buckets under helicopters to fight fire. Oregon has a well-earned reputation for doing initial attack, putting out the fires fast. As governor, I would make sure that we had adequate air assets, adequate boots on the ground, adequate instruction to teach firefighters, wildland and structural firefighters, how to go out and fight fire. But underlying the whole thing is we've got to manage our forests better so that they are not tinderboxes waiting for ignition, whether it's lightning or human caused. The greatest cause of pollution in our air, second only perhaps to automobiles, is the amount of pollution and carbon we put in the air by burning down our forests every year. We must work to put conflagration and fire out faster, better, rather than have it threaten our communities and our businesses and our quality of the environment throughout all of Oregon.
Dude, we're talking wildfires.
Come on.
Well, first of all, one thing is I will never forget the horrifying stories I heard from the families and businesses who were impacted by the 2020 Labor Day wildfires. I created a wildfire recovery committee when I was Speaker of the House to not forget, and I want those communities to know that as governor, I will not forget you. We will make sure you fully recover from those fires because that is my commitment to you. Now, when it comes to wildfire, we need to help our communities be more resilient, our homes and businesses. I support and have supported and will support more fire suppression, making sure our emergency responders and firefighters have the resources they need. And we need to follow the science on best forest practices to keep these large wildfires from getting any worse. But let's be honest here.
Her environmental policies stop us from managing the forest. Oh, here we go.
Droughts, heat, what's happening on the West Coast. And my opponents are just listening to their large polluting supporters who say we're not going to do anything on climate action. We have to continue to do our part to reduce climate change and reduce carbon pollution.
Christine, it is your turn.
We have to put fires out. We have got to get very serious about using technology and using all the tools available when we see fire starts to put the fires out. We have
which we're amazing
wildland forest firefighters. We have volunteers that need to be integrated into our response system, and we have got to get in there and put the fires out. We've got to be pushing the federal government to also put the fires out and to manage federal forests better. On the state side, we need to manage our forests as the working lands that they are. We need to treat and thin and do everything that we can to assure Oregonians that we are doing our part to keep them safe. That means reducing fuels on the land. That is our responsibility as a state, to take responsibility for the federal forest lands that we manage here in our state and to do everything we can to put the fires out.
We're going to switch over and talk about unemployment now. So here's the question. During the COVID pandemic,
Betsy
the
nailed
state's
that.
employment department let Oregonians down. Many Oregonians who were laid off or lost their jobs because of the widespread shutdowns of businesses had to endure major wait times to get their unemployment benefits. This was due to an antiquated computer system that Oregon actually had the money to fix and didn't. How will you make sure the state agencies do their jobs in a timely manner?
Oh, this is awesome.
Tina, we begin with you.
Thank you very much. Well, first of all, we should have had a new director in the employment department a lot sooner than when Governor Brown changed that leadership. They were failing.
Isn't that?
We as legislators knew that. That should have happened sooner.
People
need to get their benefits.
Right, you
when
did that?
we are in a crisis like we were in the recession.
You were like in charge of that and stuff?
Caused by the pandemic. Now, the one person who oversaw the employment department's budget when it came to their computer system was Senator Johnson. She should explain why we don't have a new computer system. She was in charge of that budget. She oversaw that department. As governor,
here we go.
The key to me is making sure we have a accountable, consumer-focused, customer service-driven state government. We need to change state government to create innovation and taking risks to serve Oregonians better. Under my administration, I will not tolerate the type of inefficiencies and incompetence at the employment department.
Christine Drazen.
You know, the employment department debacle was just a continuation of ongoing failures at the state level. We had agency after agency over the course of COVID and certainly prior to that just failed in core competencies and failed to serve Oregonians. I called for the removal of the director of the employment department. I had a meeting with her where she was just asking for people to just accept that she was doing the best that she could. Well, the best that she could do was not good enough. It did not serve Oregonians. Oregonians suffered because of that incompetence. As governor, I will fire Kate Brown's agency heads and replace them with people who are committed to customer service, who are committed to serving Oregonians, and who have core competencies in the agencies that they will oversee.
Betsy.
All three of us called for the removal of the head of the employment department. I think that tells you something about how difficult it is to move things in state government. Kate Brown knew as Secretary of State that computer system was vulnerable. She knew again from an audit as governor that system was vulnerable. There was no advocacy from her. And I would point out that while Tina Kotek has pointed the finger at me, legislative leadership, the Speaker of the House and the President of the Senate, play an inordinately heavy role. If Tina recognized this problem, she could have leaned on committee chairs to do something. She chose not to. And so we ended up, many of us as legislators and advocates for the people we represented, working those cases individually. I worked hundreds of them. That never should have happened. The state agencies have been neglected under Kate Brown. As governor, I would come in and make sure that there are can-do, want-to, will-do people running those agencies. I think it's reckless to suggest firing all of them on the first day, but I would certainly have an aggressive review of their performance.
We're down to our final question.
I like the idea of a review of their performance, audit of all state agencies.
We'll go to my colleague Deb Knapp. Deb?
It's all bloat.
Steve, our third question is from John in Eugene, and he's asking about representation across the state.
Hello, my name is John Lose. I'm from Eugene, Oregon, and what I would ask the gubernatorial candidates is, how can we include the people in Eastern Oregon in the legislative process?
Good question.
Thank you.
Since these people are just running for governor of Portland.
How will you build the bridges so we're not on opposing teams? That is the question. We begin with you, Christine.
Yeah, I am originally from Klamath Falls. I'm a small town girl. And the parts of the state which are remote and distant from the urban core are near and dear to my heart. My commitment is to be the governor for all Oregon, all Oregonians. All Oregonians deserve to be heard, respected, and to have their lives improved with this upcoming election and the change of leadership for our state. Frankly, we need change across Oregon. And in the rural parts of our state, they feel it the most. You know, over the course of COVID, they were dramatically disrespected. And when we needed local control, we did not have a responsive governor to allow for that to happen. I will work to respect and support Oregonians in all corners of the state and certainly increase opportunity and access to jobs and economic vitality.
Betsy.
I came from a rural place. Central Oregon was rural when I was growing up, and I've represented a rural natural resource-based district in the legislature for 20 years. One of the things that has happened under the leadership of Kate Brown and certainly aided and abetted by Tina Kotek is the force of Portland and Salem dictating rules to rural Oregon. They feel disrespected, looked down on, told what to do by people that don't understand rural economies very well. As governor, I would be present in all parts of the state. I don't care whether you make wood chips, potato chips, silicon chips, fish and chips. There are different elements to our economy, and we have to have a governor that understands that those economies are reliant on what's happening locally.
Dude.
I think if we start to work together and we get some wins, build trust relationships, let the rural people have a place at the table and put input into budgets and policies, that's the best way to begin to heal the urban-rural divide.
You see, how am I supposed to not vote for that? Over Christine, like, come on.
But I want to be honest with everyone. We are a divided world, our country and our state. The pandemic has made it harder for us to be with each other and talk respectfully and civilly with each other. It's going to take all of us be engaged in dialogue for the benefit of our entire state. And as governor, my job will be to be outside of Salem, in your community, listening to the solutions you have. Because what I've seen in my travels is there is a can-do attitude in so many communities in Oregon. They know how to solve
She's
their
just
problems.
full of shit.
I want, as governor, to be an ally, a partner, to help the state work with communities around the state.
It's not nice.
How you select the advisory boards and the people who work with you to make sure you have the diverse perspectives, including rural perspectives, in decision-making is going to be critical to making sure the entire state feels heard as we take on our common problems.
Yeah, I wish
together,
Tina would drop
which
out.
are not partisan issues: housing, homelessness, and education.
That brings us to our closing statements now. And here we go. You'll each have 1 minute and 15 seconds for your closing statement. The order for closing statements will go Betsy, Christine, and finally Tina.
So glad
Betsy,
this is
you
almost
have
over.
1 minute, 15
I can
seconds.
smell. My wife made dinner.
Oregon's
It smells
a
so
mess.
good.
We have never been more divided politically and geographically. The result is failed schools, tent cities, drugs, crime, and violence. Oregonians want their state back. That's why I'm running. I'm not running as a Republican or a Democrat. I'm running as an Oregonian. Loyal only to the people of Oregon, not to a partisan ideology or a partisan agenda. I'm not beholden to any special interests. I would ask you to imagine a governor who would say, I won't pass a major bill, I won't sign a major bill into law, I won't sign a budget into law, I won't make appointments to boards and commissions without bipartisan participation. I hope that you will help Oregon find its way back to the middle, where we can collaborate, we can work together, all voices can be heard at the table. Not everybody's going to get everything they want. Not everybody gets a home run at every at-bat, but we need to start working together to put common sense back into our government so that all of us can be proud of Oregon's maverick spirit. We need to earn that back, and I think only an independent governor, not beholden to any ideology, can do that.
Christine, you have a minute.
I'm with Betsy, dude.
As I've traveled the state and had the opportunity to talk to Oregonians in every corner of our state, they have shared with me their hopes, their dreams, their fears, and their frustrations. And what I have heard from so many Oregonians is this is it. We either fix it in this election cycle, we get this done, or they're going to close up shop, or they're going to move. For me personally, I think about whether or not my own kids are going to choose to make Oregon their home long term, if they can afford to buy a house, if they'll find a good job. Our state is in a very, very difficult position after a decade of single party control. I ask Oregonians, are you better off today than you were 4 years ago? If the answer is no, then the answer is change. The people on the stage with me today have been responsible for our decade of decline in our state. They have held the reins, they have been in charge, they have held the power. If you feel like our state is a mess, if you feel like homelessness is a challenge and our streets are not safe and our schools are not strong enough, I would ask for you to join me. I am committed to serving Oregonians, to being a governor for all Oregonians and leading our state in a new direction.
Tina Kotek.
I just think she's fake.
Well, I want to thank the organizers tonight for this.
I think all Oregon GOP is fake.
This is a great opportunity to engage with voters across the state, so thank you. We all know things are tough. We don't need polls to tell us that. We know things are
she's
hard
definitely fake
for everybody right now. And hiring the new head of our state is a big hiring decision. And there are 3 of us here and dramatically different people in how we would approach governing here in the state. What we hear from Senator Johnson and Representative Drazen is a new direction. But I think we should understand that what they are offering is a version of a right-wing Oregon. Senator Johnson has sided with Republicans in ways that have hurt working families over the years. She's voted against increasing minimum wage and providing paid sick leave. She even voted against background checks for gun purchases. Christine Drazan wants to ban abortion. She co-sponsored a bill that would make sure doctors would be thrown in jail if they did abortions. And she campaigns with people who are active threats to our democracy. If we want to move to the right wing, then you have choices. But I have always stood in my public service.
Heather, was the primary between
and I will always
Johnson
be
and
with
Tina?
Families, and I would
The
be
Dem
honored
primary?
to have your vote.
That does it for tonight's debate. I want to thank all three candidates. We appreciate very much you joining us. I can tell you this, you can also rewatch the
I wasn't
full
paying
debate
attention to that
on our website
because I'm not
We
registered
have
with the
each
party.
candidate's full position statements on K2.com under the Know Your Candidate section. Don't forget, Election Day is Tuesday, November 8th, which is right around the corner. Thank you for watching, everybody. Thank you for coming, and good night, everybody.
Dude, thank you for coming. Sinclair Broadcasting, let's go. Yeah, so close that off of there. The primary was a toss-up prior. Okay. Yeah, so I'm not registered with a party, so I don't get, or I'm independent, so I don't get the, like, you know, the things in the mail that say, like, who's running for what during the primaries. Like I did at one time, I registered I registered as a Democrat so I could vote against John Kitzhaber when he ran for his third screwed up term and lost. Huh. All right. That was a good debate. That was fun. Let's see. Tina had a hard drive after Tina joined. After Betsy joined. Okay. Tobias Reed was my choice in the primaries. In the Democrat primaries, Tobias Reed was a Democrat. I'm taking it. So it was Tobias Reed, Betsy, and whoever. I don't know. I like Betsy. She seems kind of cool. Can I go back through this whole thing? Oh, dude, we
Teachers,
can.
parents, and local school boards.
Oh, wow.
The social...
I wonder how long this will stay available so we can go back through it and grab some stuff. Yeah, it was a good time. Thanks for showing up. If I don't know if they're going to do it again. I just threw this together real quick, but if they do it again, we can watch it. It's what? August? October? It's October right now. November 8th, we got another month. If they do another one, we'll fire it up and see what happens. Let's look up, what is it? Oh, we can do it. Let's do it right here. Oh, shit. Oregon governor debate. We'll have to look up and see if they have debate schedule. I should have put schedule in there. And we'll find out. Opposition to the boyfriend loophole. What do you mean by the... Oh, that's the only debate? Darn. Why was she opposed to the boyfriend loophole? Or what? I don't even know what a boyfriend loophole is. That's the one where, like, my wife could call in and say, hey, come get his guns. Oh, really? I'm this late to the party? Shit, I thought this was the first one. Yeah. I think you're right. I think I'm behind the times. Did we get our voter book yet? I was thinking about when that came. I haven't got that in the mail, I don't think. They usually go out the beginning of October, right? So we should be getting our voter guide. Then I was thinking about going live and reading through that. I thought that'd be kind of fun. Because I used to always sit with my family and we'd vote together. And we'd read the thing together, figure it all out together, go through all of them. Google the terms, try to figure out, like, when you're reading the stuff that you're voting on, we just Google it and try to figure out what all the words meant. Like, so this one actually means if I vote for it that I'm against it, like, because the way they word all that stuff. Yeah, all right. Well, we're gonna shut her down. I'm gonna go eat some dinner. Appreciate you guys hanging out. If anything else, something like this happens, we can watch it again. I tried to find some, who is that? Nimbai Football Rules. I tried to find some live coverage of Alex Scarlatos. He did a motorcycle tour. I tried to find some of that, but none. I thought he would stream it live on Facebook or something, but no, I didn't find any live of it. So that's going to be an interesting race if you're interested in Oregon, because he's like District 4 or something. Replaced Peter DeFazio, because DeFazio's gone. It's Alex Carlitos and somebody else. I honestly don't even know who he's running against. But Peter DeFazio timed out. He's been in office since I was 2 years old, and he got out of there. And so now Alex going. What do you think of Alec? Heather, you like Alex Carlatos? You in District 4? What the hell are we? District 4? Val Hoyle. Yeah. So I did a phone survey where they asked me all these questions about if I was voting for Val Hoyle or Alex Carlatos, and I had no idea who the hell Val Hoyle was, and so I didn't know how to answer any of the questions, but like the stuff they were asking me about Alex Carlatos was hilarious. Yeah, so am I. I'm in Scarlatos District. So it was hilarious on this poll. They're like, Alex Scarlatos has made fun of women from his district, saying, and like some comment that he made, and I'm like, I started laughing, and the pollster lady was like, so do you agree or disagree? And I'm like, well, I'm from here, so I kind of get what he's saying, so agree. Like, I didn't know how to answer it because it was a good joke that he made, and they were trying to use it as, I don't know, whatever. Oh yeah, for sure. You could tell it was like, I asked her during the survey a couple times. I'm like, who is this for again? Because like the questions they'd ask, it's like he said like all women from the valley are fat, and I'm just like, okay, well yeah. Like I don't know. I can't remember exactly what they said, but it was hilarious. Oh, you do like him? Yeah, I probably shouldn't talk about it because I kind of know him personally, but I mean I'd vote for him, but I don't think he's a good candidate. Yeah, he stopped a he stopped a terrorist attack thing. Uh, He was on Dancing with the Stars, but he's a member of the good old boys, just like Christine, where they're just like member of the GOP. That it's a place you put your money and move it around, and then you do this thing, which is called politics. And I don't think he actually has anybody else's interest in mind other than his bank account. I just think he's like the rest of the Oregon GOP. But I like him. I mean, I'm going to vote for him. even though all the shit I just said about him, I'd vote for him. Going to. Whatever. Who's the communist, him or me? Spelled Valhoyle wrong. Yeah, the Oregon GOP, honestly, well, I don't know. I think it's a lot of BS. I think it's a lot of people with money that do things just to keep their money, like anybody with money does. You, whatever. But I have never seen this person before in my life. I've never heard anything Val Hoyle has ever said. I have no clue. Honestly, like, is that bad? Like, has she done anything before? Is she somebody I'm supposed to know? Oh, what was his name? Shit, the guy from, was it Al? No, who was it? Dude, who's the piss scientist? Who was the piss scientist guy? And his son was trying to run for office too, and like got in trouble for like something to do with nuclear secrets and shit. Al Robinson, right? Art Robinson. Art Robinson. Art Robinson was the piss doctor. Yes. Yes. Oh my God. I absolutely love Art Robinson. Oregon candidates call for urine samples, latest offbeat move. But like when you it's so funny. But when you think about it, what he was doing was he was like actually doing a study, like a real actual study. But like, bro, maybe not right now. Maybe not in the middle of the campaign. Don't, like you're trying to be the governor. Maybe you collect piss later, right? Like, vote for me. And can I have your piss? That was great. That was hilarious. And his son had something to do with like nuclear something at Oregon State. It's crazy. But yeah, Art was fantastic, man. There was people down where I am that had like big old signs in their trucks, and like how the Trump people do. Like they had Art Robinson shit all over, and it was just hilarious, dude. The billboards, the road signs were just gigantic. It's like that's the piss guy. Fucking old busted up Geo Metros driving around with like just fucking Art Robinson on every fucking panel. Yeah. That was good. All right. We better shut this down. It's getting late. We've been going for an hour and 10 now. Good stuff. All over Eastern Lane, too. And Western. Yeah, that stuff was just nuts. Those people and just driving around with the things all over with the Art Robinson signs was absolutely great. I don't see a lot of people like as wild for Scarlatos as they were for Robinson for some reason, which is kind of weird. But because you would think with him having like the TV exposure and all of that and the movie and his Clint Eastwood funded his movie and everything. And like I said, I know him. I actually know Alec, and like all that Eastwood money got him a really nice ranch. So I mean he's a good guy. I'm gonna vote for him, but I don't think think he's gonna do anything for anybody. I don't think he cares about anybody else but himself and his money. So whatever. I mean, we'll see. Yeah, I guess that's my endorsement of Alex Carlotos. I don't think he cares, but vote for him anyway. Okay. Have a good night, guys.